The word percent means per 100. If a basketball player makes 32 free throws out of every 50 tries, what percent of his free throws has he made? So we need to show a method of calculation. So we can think of percent as out of 100. And so if we're trying to figure out what percent of free throws, we can use a proportion to figure this out. So let's say this basketball player makes 32 out of every 50. We want to know how many out of 100 that would be. So you can see here we can set up a proportion to do this math. This is probably what you've done in your math classes, where you divide one by the other and then multiply by 100. That's exactly what this proportion is showing. So if we do that math, the free throw percentage is 64%. Let's look at B. What is 40% of 70? Again, we can think of 40% as 40 out of 100. And what we're trying to figure out is how many would that be out of 70? So we're setting up a proportion here. It's 40 out of 100 here. How many would it be out of 70? So we divide 40 by 100 and multiply by 70. We're doing cross multiplication. We end up with 28. These are the same proportionally. 40 out of 100 is the same as 28 out of 70. So let's look at C. If you got 60 correct and 24 wrong on a test, what percent did you get correct? So here's the important thing here. In order to know what percent of the whole test that we got correct, you need to know how many questions are on the entire test. You can't just use the numbers that you're given. You have to look at the total that's on the test. So to get the total on the test, we add these two together. And we figure out that there are 84 questions on the test. There's 84 questions total. That way, we can use these numbers to set up a proportion to figure out what percentage that you got correct. So you got 60 correct out of 84. How is that proportionally equal to some amount over 100%? Because that's what we're looking for. And if you do this math here, you would end up with a 71.4% on the test. Because you got 68 out of 84 correct. That is equal to some amount out of 100. Percents are just proportions in the same way that we do other proportions. We can use percentages in chemistry looking at percent composition. So let's say we have a mixture containing 17 grams of copper sulfate and 12 grams of sodium nitrate. What percent of the mixture is made of copper sulfate? So again, much like the question that we were doing before, we need to know what the total weight of the mixture is. So we have 17 grams of copper sulfate and 12 grams of sodium nitrate. We need to know what the total amount that we have, so we add those two together. Be like if you put this mixture on the scale, how much would it weigh all combined? It would weigh 29 grams. Now the question is saying, what percent of it is made of copper sulfate? 17 grams of the 29 grams total are copper sulfate. What would that be out of 100? What would that be out of 100? And so we solve for x here. And if we solve for x there, we get 58.6% is copper sulfate by weight. Now let's say we had a compound containing 48 grams of carbon, 32 grams of oxygen, and 6 grams of hydrogen. What percent of this compound's mass is carbon? Again, in the same respect, we need to figure out what the total weight is first, because that's what a percent is. It's the part out of the total. So here we're looking at the part out of the total weight of our molecules. So we would have to add 48, 32, and 6 together for a total weight of 86 grams. Then we can look at the percent of carbon by setting up our proportion. 48 grams over 86 grams total, so that's carbon total, is equal to some amount over 100. This is our percent making. And it's about 55.8% carbon. In the last one, for number 3, let's say we have the compound C5H9 C5H9O3. Find the percent by mass for each element in the compound. So there's 3 elements. That means you should find 3 separate percentages. And when you add all the percentages up, they should equal 100. So the first thing that we need to do is calculate the molar mass. So we learned how to calculate the molar mass already. The molar mass for this substance is 117 grams. So that's the whole mass of it. Then we can look at the parts. So first we'll look at carbon. For carbon, we have 5 carbons, which is a total weight of 60 grams. So we have 60 grams of carbon. So we have 60 grams of carbon over the total weight of 117 grams, and we set that equal to 100. And we end up with a percent of 51.3% carbon. Using the same setup, you should be able to calculate hydrogen and oxygen. So do that now. So when you calculate the others, you should end up with 7.7% hydrogen and 41% oxygen. And when you add those all together, you end up with 100%, which should make sense to you because if you look at the total weight of all of them, they should all equal. No. Should be able to complete 4 and 5 on your own here.